Hello my dear friends, you're on the Military Summary channel, and this video we're going to discuss the most important events that took place during the previous 12 hours. We have a lot of very interesting updates, a lot of changes on the ground, so let's start. And first we're going to start with the Kursk direction. The Ukrainian sources published the video from the village by the name of Nizapne. In this video we can see the Ukrainians who were dropping off the Russian flag and were raising the Ukrainian flag instead. This situation took place exactly in this point, exactly in this building, which confirms complete control over this city by the Ukrainians. Currently we haven't received since the beginning of the Kursk offensive any updates regarding Viktorovka, Uspenovka and Gordievka, but most likely due to the strong presence of Ukrainians in this village, most likely these three villages were also captured by the Ukrainians during the previous days of the Kursk offensive operation. Furthermore, we see that the Ukrainians are moving further and further in the western direction, and currently the Russians still haven't managed to stop or stabilize the situation. And as I understand, we are not the only one who see this. Most likely the local authorities and Putin himself also see the situation, and today the Kursk authorities decided to evacuate the entire Gluskovsky region. So this is the Glushkova, this is the capital of a small region on the border, along the border with Ukraine, and the local authorities decided to evacuate the entire region. So it's a few dozens of thousands of people would be evacuated, and some of them have already been evacuated by the Russians. Now let's move further. Let's talk about the northern flank. We continue receiving significant number of updates, and now it's very difficult to understand how exactly should we correct the map and what kind of adjustments we should do. Why is that? First of all, we got the video from this point, and in this video we can see the Ukrainian FPV drone attack on Russian tank or Russian vehicles that probably were attacking the Ukrainians from behind in the village of Zhuravli. As a result of serious attack, the Russian vehicles were damaged and destroyed. So according to this geolocation, the Russian tanks vehicles were spotted and discovered in this part. Maybe this is an old video and these strikes took place before the Ukrainians entered the village. Maybe these attacks took place yesterday, we don't know. So it's very difficult to understand how to adjust the map, but on the other hand, we received a lot of updates about the situation in the vicinity of the village by the name of Safonovka, which is located much far to the north from geolocated Ukrainian positions. First we got the photo with fire anomalies, and as you can see, according to this photo, almost the entire village of Safonovka was covered with fire. And later we got details about destroyed Ukrainian convoy that was ambushed exactly in this area. In these photos we can see significant number of light vehicles that were destroyed by the Russian artillery strike or FPV drone strikes, and these armored vehicles were destroyed exactly in this village, and most likely these fire anomalies related to these armored vehicles. So as you can see, from one side we have FPV drone attack on Russian tanks in this part. On the other hand, we receive significant number of destroyed vehicles much far to the north. So once again, as I understand, nobody knows for sure how exactly to adjust the territories in the northern flank of Kursk direction. On the other hand, we continue receiving updates about the fortifications that the Russians are building along the main road between Rylsk and Kursk. So another line of fortifications was created. The length of this fortification belt is around 5 kilometers, and the Russians have created this belt since the beginning for the previous 5-6 days since the beginning of the Kursk offensive. So from this perspective, we understand that most likely the Ukrainians are moving further to the north, and the Ukrainian control over this part most likely is bigger than you can see right now in front of your screens. Now let's move further. We have additional updates from different towns and cities. Today the Ukrainians published another video how they were raising the flag in the village of Lyubimovka, and this is the third or fourth flag raised by the Ukrainians exactly in the vicinity of this territory. Furthermore, we continue receiving additional updates from the borderlands. The Ukrainians continue sending more and more forces in this direction, and now according to information we have, the Ukrainians have redeployed the forces of 95th Air Mobile Brigade. It's a very interesting story of this brigade because 2 days ago there was a report that this brigade first was redeployed to Toretsk, New York agglomeration with the purpose to stabilize the situation, and now a few more days later the Ukrainians have redeployed this brigade back to the north. So very difficult to understand, but anyway, I'll remind you that according to information we have, the forces of 80th Brigade and 82nd Air Assault Brigade were already withdrew their positions due to critical losses that they suffered since the beginning of the Kursk offensive. Now let's talk about Sudzha. We have additional progress on the ground. In this video we can see how the Ukrainians were evacuating the tank, how the Ukrainians were moving exactly in this part of Sudzha, and based on this video we have corrected the map in Ukrainian favor by adding additional territory under their control. As for the southern flank, according to different mappers, the Ukrainians managed to improve their positions, and that the Borki is no longer in the gray zone. The village of Borki is under complete Ukrainian control. So this is the situation in the Kursk direction. Once again, we have evacuation, we have the defense belt that the Russians are building along the main road between Rylsk, Lvov and Kursk, and during the previous days we got lots of satellite pictures, so most likely the Russians think and expect that most likely they will be forced to meet the Ukrainians exactly along this line, that everything below this line would be captured by the Ukrainians. We have additional flags in the redeployment of 95th Brigade and unknown situation with the northern flank. Now let's move to Liptsy, Kharkiv direction. We have additional changes on the ground. According to different mappers, the Russians managed to restore control over the tree line between Travianskaya Water Reserve and Gluboko itself. We're talking about this line. If you remember, yesterday we discussed the video of Russian attack in this direction and how the Russians managed to reach this territory. Most of Russian vehicles were destroyed, but anyway we can see that that was a very powerful attack. Furthermore, we have additional report update that the Russians during the previous 48 hours were attacking not just on the line Strelechna-Gluboko and not just along the line Pilna and Gluboko itself. Again, the Russians were attacking on the line Pilna, Lukyantsy-Zelene. We have today additional video confirming additional Russian progress. In this video we can see Russian armored vehicle personnel carriers that were heading towards the village of Zelene under very heavy Ukrainian fire. So based on this video we have adjusted the map and added additional block under complete Russian control. So as you can see, despite the problems and despite the situation in Kursk direction, the Russians are testing the Ukrainian defense belt, trying to find the weak point, and then the Russians will break this area also. Now let's move further. Let's talk about northern Kupiansk direction. According to information we have, the forces of 54th Mechanized Brigade and 112th Territory Defense Brigade were encircled by the Russians on the line between Pishana and Tabaevka. So there are and the Ukrainians are being encircled for the previous already for 3 days. So for now it's just rumors, so we need to get additional updates, but this is like very interesting piece of news that appeared today in the Russian segment of the Telegram. Now let's move further to Toretsk, New York agglomeration. Today the Russian sources published the video confirming that they established complete control over the village, over the city town by the name of Zalizne. So the video was added on map softly. We don't know for sure where exactly the Russians were making this video, but if they're saying the truth, that means that the landfill and the coal mine were captured as well. So for now it's better to wait for additional updates, but very interesting. Now let's talk about New York agglomeration. The Ukrainian defense belt collapsed completely. Probably within the next few days New York will be captured by the Russians, as well as Nelipovka. Today the pro-Ukrainian mappers and neutral mappers adjusted their maps. According to information we have, as you can see, the Russians improved their positions significantly in the northwestern direction from Yurievka, and the most important, the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt in the heart of New York and to capture significant territories. As you can see, this is the Russian breakthrough that they managed to create, and the Russians captured the southern part of the industrial zone of the citadel, and furthermore the Russians managed to encircle the Ukrainians who are currently located in the citadel. So this is another cauldron, and something tells me that as for New York Toretsk agglomeration, we're gonna see maybe 2-3 cauldrons or even more exactly in this area and in the very near future. The situation in New York is getting critical, and once again, according to information we have, right before the beginning of the Ukrainian Kursk offensive, the 95th Brigade was redeployed to Toretsk, and now we see reports that this brigade have been redeployed to Kursk, back to Kursk. So it's very difficult to understand what is going on, but maybe first the Ukrainians brought the forces here, but then they decided to move them back to Kursk, and that's allowed the Russians to break through the Ukrainian defense belt and to capture significant territories in New York. Now let's move to Pokrov's direction. As you can see, the front line is collapsing, is crumbling. I don't know what kind of word to use to describe the critical situation that Ukrainians appeared in. According to information we have, during the previous 24 hours, the Russians improved their position significantly further along the railways towards the city of Grodovka, and as a result of offensive operation, the Russians managed to break through the Ukrainian defense belt to answer and to occupy around 50% of the village Zhuravka. The Russians completely established complete control over the village of Orlovka, and the Russians answered the village of Mykolaievka on the southern flank. So significant progress, as you can see. And furthermore, we have report that the Ukrainians decided to establish the curfew in the village of Novogrodovka. This is Novogrodovka from now on. The curfew is around 20 hours a day. The civilians have just 4 hours a day, probably to get some water or something like this. Anyway, the Ukrainians are getting ready, are preparing themselves to fall back and to give a battle for the Russians. Obviously, the Ukrainians understand that they can't fall back further. They need to stand, because if the Ukrainians lose Grodovka, Novogrodovka, that means that obviously they will lose the city of Selidova, and this can lead to complete collapse and to complete defeat the Ukrainians, and they will not be able even to adopt a law allowing them to create military administrations in the Kursk area when everything is going to be finished by the Russians. Furthermore, we got additional video from Zhelane that was published by the Ukrainians. In this video we can see the Ukrainians who were FPV droning the Russians in this part of the village. Then this video confirms that most of the Zhelane was captured by the Russians. Maybe the entire Zhelane has already fallen, and that was stated by different mappers already, but we have just corrected a portion of the territories under complete Russian control. Furthermore, the Russians continue their offensive in the South Donetsk direction. According to different mappers, the Russians improved their positions by capturing additional fields in the vicinity of the coal mine and the stronghold, and this stronghold is the next target of the Russians. If they take the stronghold under control, then they will be able to move further to the coal mines Ugledar, Vadian and Konstantinovka. And as you can see, summarizing everything, the Russians have significant progress, and they are about to defeat completely the Ukrainians in the South Donetsk direction. The Russians are about to defeat the Ukrainians completely on Pokrov's direction, New York, Toretsk, and something big is going to happen, most likely in the Kharkiv direction. If the Ukrainians did redeploy forces from this area to Kursk, the Russians have the best time to get as close as possible to Kharkiv itself and to force the Ukrainians to redeploy forces back. So very interesting situation, and let's follow. And that's it for the short video. Military Summary channel reminds to condemn any violence in the world. Thank you for watching. Subscribe to my channel, put your likes, join my Patreon, and have a good day. Bye bye.